Hi, this is Silverpaw Reads, and today we are bringing you Chapter 1 of a whole new fan fiction, Murder on Green Hill Island. This is also done by the same author that makes Song Tales Dreams Come True, Two-Tailed Fox. I recommend checking them out. I'll have a link in the description down below to this chapter so you guys can read along with me, or read it yourself and maybe even read ahead if you don't want to wait for me to get this done. Anyways, let's get started with Chapter 1. "Please, Mr. Hedgehog, tell us what horrific events occurred whilst you were at that island," the presenter asked. The room the two were situated in was quite small, with long jet-black curtains covering most of the walls. The only flash of color to juxtapose against the bleak appearance of the rest of the studio was a green screen that was plastered over the wall behind the two. In the middle of the room were two small wooden chairs with turquoise fabric backrests that connected them to the wooden frames. The gold Tenrek held a small handful of cue cards in front of her, and had just finished introducing the show and her special guests for that event's televised evening. Sitting adjacent to her was a tall, skinny sapphire hedgehog. Sonic cleared his throat and focused his emerald pupils at the flashing red light at the top of the camera that sat between the two, recording the conversation to the world. "I still can't believe what happened to us. It all started after a good friend Cream won the $10 million lottery. To celebrate, she rented out Green Hill Island and gave all of her closest friends invitations to join her," Sonic began, thinking back to all the horrifying events that had plagued the group not weeks prior to the recording. The small waves, caused by the surge of passing boats that entered and exited, carrying excited passengers off on fantastical voyages, lapped the sides of the mighty white ship. The ship towered over the rest of the boats in the marina. Big black letters swept over the side of the ship's hull, reading Anubis. The Anubis was only the fanciest, top-of-the-line cruise ship known in all of Mobius. People would flock from far and wide just to get a chance to ride the magnificent specimen, which hosted a plethora of rooms, activities, and even had 6 on-deck pools. The seagulls squawked high overhead, soaring along the flurries of winds that wept the faces of the 10 animals that had received an invitation. Sonic was the first to step onto the rocking boat. He breathed in deeply, allowing the salty scent of the ocean aroma to tantalize his senses. "I can't believe she won. This is going to be so much fun," he beamed, rushing down to his bedroom, throwing his bags and sprinting back up to the deck before any of his friends had time to think. "Sonic, wait up! You can't keep running away from me forever," the pink hedgehog known as Amy Rose called out, sweat dripping from her brow as she tried her hardest to keep up with the hero she admired so. "Come on, Amy, give it a rest already," Sonic sighed, dodging out of the way of her hug attack, causing her to smash into the deck. "Fine, for now, my love." She blew him a kiss before retreating to the lower decks to prepare her room, making sure that it was the one adjacent to the one Sonic had chosen. "Will she ever give it a rest?" Tails asked. "I wish I knew, buddy," Sonic responded to Tails the Fox, his best friend and renowned boy genius of Mobius. "Maybe you could invent a sort of shield for me," Sonic joked, slapping his palm against Tails's. "I don't know if I can," Tails giggled, rubbing the back of his neck with his other hand. He couldn't say no to Sonic's pleading pout, however, so he followed his sentence with, "But I'll give it a try." "Can't you boys just get a room?" a voice taunted the two. They both turned their head to see a black and white bat waltz onto the boat, her hand placed firmly on her swaying hips. "Rouge, you know it isn't like that," Tails complained. "Whatever you say, hun." Rouge the bat winked at the flustered fox before fixing her gaze to Sonic. "Do you know where the bathroom is, Blue? A girl's gotta know where to freshen up." She smirked at the two, batting her eyelids. "Down the hall," Sonic replied. "What you gotta do, get changed into a bikini?" he asked. "Oh, wouldn't you like that?" she joked suggestively before turning and walking off down the hallway. "That girl never gives it a rest, does she?" a violet feline known as Blaze the cat asked, walking onto the boat with her suitcase trailing behind her, the squeaky wheel struggling to overcome the dents in the wooden dock. "You just need to know when to show some skin, Blaze. A bikini isn't that bad." Sally Acorn, an auburn-haired squirrel, laughed as she joined the cat on the boat. "Sally! Blaze!" Sonic and Tails cried out in unison, rushing up to the two girls and giving them big hugs. Sonic and Sally had been great friends for ages, along with Tails and Blaze. It was only when Tails and Sonic had become best friends and began hosting parties to celebrate their countless victories over Dr. Eggman that the two girls finally got to make each other's acquaintances. Ever since, the four of them had been inseparable, although sometimes Blaze and Sally had argued about clothes, seeing as Blaze was the lot more sensible one and more self-aware of her appearance. "You don't have to get so sentimental. You all saw each other 2 nights ago." An annoyed ebony hedgehog called. Shadow the hedgehog complained. Shadow? Blaze gasped, quite surprised to see the quiet introvert arrive. Cream invited you? Don't act so surprised, he said in a flat tone, pushing past the cat. I didn't mean it that way, Blaze apologized. Whatever, see you guys around, Shadow called as he disappeared down into the dark depths of the cruise ship. Don't worry about Shadow, he gets that way sometimes, a voice called out from the pier. Silver! Sonic waved as the silver-furred hedgehog walked up the plank and plonked his bags on the greased deck of the ship. Sometimes I really don't understand that guy, Silver said, scratching his head as he heard the door to the staircase slam shut, rocking the ship harder than the lapping waves were. You don't understand anybody, Sally chuckled. Nice burn, Sal. Sonic high-fived the squirrel. Guys, come on, leave the poor guy alone. A melodic voice filled with care floated over the side of the deck. I'd know that lovely voice anywhere. Blaze sighed as a yellow-skinned, purple-haired mongoose named Mina walked up the plank. Mina! Amy called out as she returned up the stairs, running over to give the mongoose a hug. How's your singing career going? Feels like it's been ages since we caught up. Mina froze up at the gaze of all of her friends, turned to her. It's, you know, the usual, just singing and selling out concerts, no biggie. We really need to go to one soon, Tails added. No! She shouted out before covering her mouth with her hands. I mean, no, it's fine. I'm taking a little break from music. Oh, okay, well, we still need to hang out, Amy smiled. Mina drew the back of her hand over her forehead, absorbing the sweat that had begun to form. She was happy that the attention had been turned elsewhere. Well, I think that's everybody. Let's shove off, Sonic yelled enthusiastically, pumping his fist in the air, excited to be going on another adventure with some of his beloved freedom fighters. Hey, you better not be leaving without me, a gruff voice called out. The rest of the invited guests glanced over at the side to see the red echidna, Knuckles, rush around the corner. He just made it onto the boat before it set off on its voyage. What took you so long, Red? Rouge inquired as she made her grand entrance, clad in a very revealing blue two-piece bikini. Well, Knuckles started, but when he turned around to face Rouge, he stumbled over the rest of his words. Come on, Knucklehead, stop drooling, Sonic laughed, patting his friend on the back. Hey, I wasn't drooling, I just lost track of my thoughts, he huffed, crossing his arms over his chest in defiance. Can you guys quiet down a bit? I'd like to get some rest before we arrive, Shadow spoke, jutting open the door to stare at the group of animals before shrouding himself back into the darkness of the deck below. What's his problem? Silver asked. That's just Shadow. Don't worry, he'd just like to keep to himself. He'll come join the rest of us eventually. But for now, I'm gonna go soak up a few rays. This tan won't make itself. Rouge winked as she waltzed over to one of the many deck chairs that littered the boat and lay down. Last one to the pool is a rotten chow, Knuckles called out, ripping off his shirt and diving headfirst into the closest pool. You are so on, Sonic cheered, following in suit. Together, the 10 friends, even Shadow, who eventually joined in with the rest of them, soaked up the sun, swam and laughed as the cruise ship slowly sailed towards its destination, Green Hill Island. So it was just your group of friends and Cream the Rabbit on the island when everything transpired? The Golden Tenric asked, glancing between Sonic and the camera. Well, it was supposed to be, but things didn't exactly turn out that way, Sonic replied before continuing to recount his story. The moon had risen high in the sky, illuminating the dark, gloomy shadows that loomed over the raging waves of the mid-ocean swell. Yawning and tired, the crew on board the ship had all retreated to their respected rooms to catch up on some much-needed shut-eye before the disembarkment the next morning. Is the coast clear? A gruff, raspy voice whispered. I think so. A more effeminate voice replied. I'll check the deck. Slowly, a shadow dived from shadow to shadow, keeping clear of the light as the individual made her way to the main deck of the cruise ship. She darted her head from side to side, scanning the area to make sure there was no lingering passengers who could cause some trouble. When there was no sign of any life, the being stepped forth from the shadows. The moon illuminated her body, dancing off the fox's red fur and getting absorbed by the black leather that she donned. Fiona Fox swiveled her head towards her companion, beckoning him over to her with a finger rather seductively. Her sneaky companion, the green-furred hedgehog, finally made his presence known to the roaring waves and billowing winds of their environment. Scourge, the hedgehog, also was clad in black leather, mirroring Fiona's appearance. Where's the grub? I'm starving, he complained, taking a swig from the bottle of vodka that he had on hand. Well, we shouldn't have stowed away in the engine room then. We could have hidden in food storage, but no. Fiona rolled her eyes sarcastically. Look, I know it was an uncomfortable trip, but just remember why we're here, babe. Scourge smiled, wrapping his lanky arm around the fox's middle and bringing her in close to him, their hips pressing up against each other. Oh, don't worry. I have a one-track mind when it comes to the green stuff. A seductive smile crossed her face before she curled her tail around his middle area before breaking apart, rushing over to the main door to the boat's dining hall. You're such a tease, Scourge grumbled. Well, once we find the rabbit safe and steal her winnings, then you can have a piece of this, she taunted, moving her hands down her body before turning and skulking through the door, her nose following the scent of the delectable food. Gold glanced at her wristwatch while Sonic continued to recount the events that transpired prior to their arrival on the island. They were only 5 minutes into their broadcast, and if one thing Gold was, it was professional. Thank you for the riveting recount so far, but can we please skip to the part where you all arrived on the island? Gold put on her most polite voice. Sonic smiled in return and skipped forward in his story. So, after we all arrived and met Cream, she invited us all to dinner in the grand hall of the island's mansion, he continued. The large marble structure served as quite the eyesore. It was a stark comparison compared to the rather undeveloped island, with its windy gravel paths that snaked through the lush undergrowth. Small ivy shackles crisscrossed over the mostly untraveled path. The gigantic structure towered over the rest of the island, situated right in the corner. The small island was a quaint little slice of paradise, floating in the middle of the Mobian Ocean. It would only take about an hour's run around the entire perimeter, or a couple minutes for a certain blue-streaked hedgehog. Cream invited her 10 guests into the lavish dining room. They all took their seats at the mahogany table that stretched from end to end as they marveled at the fantastical glass chandelier that hung over their heads. 1,000 small bulbs were shielded by an array of different colored glass diamonds that caused a kaleidoscope of enchanting light across the room, twinkling in the guests' eyes. Oh, this place is simply divine, Mina breathed after everyone had taken their seats and dug into their meals. By the way, Cream, how come we're the only ones here? I would have thought that a place this size would need a sizable staff on hand to keep everything in working order, Blaze added as she blew a soft breath on her boiling spoon of soup before sipping it elegantly. Next to her, Sonic threw elegance to the wind as he loudly slurped his soup indignantly, much to the annoyance of Blaze. Isn't he cute when he eats? Amy sighed, resting her head on her hands as she stared at him. I wouldn't say soup, that's just Sonic. Tails waved her response away as he began to converse with Mina, the two catching up on all the things the two had accomplished since the last time they had met. Thank you for inviting me, Shadow nodded towards the small rabbit who blushed in response. It was my pleasure, she giggled, addressing the whole room. I just wanted to share some of my appreciation as my thanks for all that you have done for me. Your friendships are the one thing I treasure above all else, especially the money. If I can use my winnings to make you guys happy, then it's my pleasure. Here's to friendship, Sonic raised his glass to the air. Hear, hear, the group chimed in as they clinked the fragile wine glasses together before sipping the red liquid held inside. I normally like to work alone, but even I have to admit that we all have a pretty good thing going on here. Rouge smiled as she downed the rest of her wine and began to refill her glass. Shadow nodded in agreement. Freedom fighters for life. Sonic pumped his fist in the air, glancing around the room to exchange smiles with each and every one of the group. The chatter changed to small talk as the group split into their individual conversations and began to get caught up on the events that they had all been through since their last group gathering over the rest of their meals. Eventually, the night grew long and the wine ran short. Yawns and stretches ran throughout the group like a plague as the drowsiness from travel began to affect them all. I can see you're all quite tired. Please feel free to go to bed. I want you all to feel rested for the fun things I have planned for us tomorrow. Cream giggled in excitement. One by one, the group excused themselves and retreated to their respected beds, crashing on the comfortable mattresses until only 4 remained in the dining room. Well, I think I'm gonna hit the hay. Amy stretched. See you in the morning, Amy. Cream waved. You too, Cream. Night, guys. Well, I think that's my cue to leave as well. It was great getting to catch up with you, Cream. I can't wait to see what you have in store tomorrow. Rouge stood up and strode out of the room, her eyelids fluttering from exhaustion. I'm gonna head off too. See you in the morning, Silver. Cream yawned as she retreated to the confines of her master bedroom, leaving the tipsy, silver-furred hedgehog to fend for himself alone in the dining room. If I may interject, The Golden Teneric interrupted Sonic after he had finished his sentence. "Y'all seem like such a close group of friends who had immense trust and respect for each other. That isn't at all like the group that I've heard about." She scratched her head in confusion, looking at Sonic, whose gaze turned towards his ruby-red shoes. "I know. We were the best of friends, closer than any other. However, after that unfortunate night and all the ones preceding on the dreadful island, that would be the last time that we were ever close or friendly. The last time ever." The sun had already broken through the thin layer of clouds that floated in the sky and dispelled the dark shadows that were cast on the land. Its glory rays shone through the drawn curtains through a crack, shining brightly on Blaze's eyelids. "Ugh," she complained, trying to roll over to block out the light. However, the brightness only continued to intensify until Blaze was fully awake, unable to find her way back to the land of slumber. In an annoyed groan, she got out of bed, slipped into her shoes, and walked downstairs to prepare herself some morning coffee. After Blaze had prepared the instant coffee in a ceramic mug, she proceeded into the lounge room to wait on the luscious couches until the rest of her friends woke up. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight which she witnessed. "Ah!" Blaze screamed at the top of her lungs. In her complete shock, the mug slipped from her grasp and shattered into 100 tiny pieces as the rest of the guests were roused from their slumbers and rushed downstairs to investigate the source of Blaze's screams. A wave of shock surged through the other 9 animals as they all gasped upon seeing the same sight that Blaze had previously. There, fallen backwards onto the small coffee table, was the body of Cream. Her eyes still wide in shock, blood was splattered all over the table and couch and had pooled on the stained carpet below. A thin line ran along her neck, showing an indication that somebody had slit her neck with a sharp knife in the middle of the night. "What happened?" Silver stumbled over his words, struggling to form a coherent sentence through his fear and shock. "Cream, she was murdered," Shadow spoke flatly, addressing the rest of the room. "But we're the only people on this island," Mina chimed in, confused. "Exactly. That would mean that—" Tails stopped as his eyes widened at the realization of his words. He croaked, unable to complete his sentence. "Yes, it would." Sonic narrowed his eyes before glancing at the other 9 frightened faces in the room. "Cream was murdered by one of us." Alright, that's it for Chapter 1. I'll see you guys next time for Chapter 2. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.